We are going to evaluate National Cathedral, how we have done it, and see whether that's what we did in this country. So here is the National Cathedral. I say it's a holy mess. It's a holy mess. And what was it supposed to be? First, it was supposed to be a national interdenominational center. There are too many Christian groups in this country. We need one place, just like the Muslims, despite their different sects. They have one national mosque. So we have a national cathedral. Why it's called a cathedral, though, it's never been clear, because a cathedral is the seat of an episcopal bishop. And we don't have a national bishop. So I don't know why they chose cathedral. But we assume we understand what they mean. A big church. So that's what a cathedral means. Not an episcopal seat of a bishop. It's a big church. Okay. It's also going to be a civic ceremonial center, because they say we don't have a place that is solemn enough. If you're doing national events, we do. So swearing of the president, we go and put them in some open field. No. We need a nice, befitting structure for swearing in. That's very important. We also need a place where you can do, state of the nation address, and it's not just the parliamentarians and a few guests, but bigger building and things like that. Third, we want it to become a pilgrimage site for African Christianity, because Christianity has been in Africa longer than Europe, right? The Ethiopian eunuch. The Christianity came to Africa first, but somehow the Europeans have taken it over and want it back. We want our Christianity back. So we want to create a site to show that Africans, we own a stake in Christianity. So we're not only going to build a national cathedral, we're going to have a Bible museum. Don't forget that part. That's big. The theologian that they brought, there's a guy, this Norwegian trained theologian that they brought to head the thing. You should listen to him, man. About the Christian, sometimes the grammar. You listen to the man. Say, hey, if you want to give me your money, you want to come to your bank account and say, Charlie, this theology, there's spiritual matters, deep spiritual matters. Anyway, so they want to build a biblical museum, and they don't forget what the secretary said. Some people have read the Bible all their life. They have never eaten a fruit from the Holy Land. Not eaten a single fruit of the Holy Land. They're just reading the Bible. We're going to do a biblical gardens, and every food that's in the Bible will manifest it in the restaurant in that garden. These are very important benefits, mind you. And then we will make it a site for godliness. When the MPs and the ministers, when they see it, they stop stealing. The minute you have to say, oh, come out, say, oh, no stealing anymore. Okay. I think what you guys and those of us, I'm here representing all policy analysts in Ghana, right? I've endowed myself with that crown. So what you guys and us as policy analysts, what we can agree on is that the evaluation of the cost and the benefit could have been more comprehensive. They should have done an attempt to actually put out on document that kind of details it. Like this is the conversation we've had on what are the costs and what they know. And then we could have had decisions around these promises. Would they really pan out, given our history, other projects of similar nature? When we're doing the National Theatre, we never said whenever it has problems, you have to go and beg other donors, because the Chinese give you a National Theatre. Maintain it to you. Say when the thing is a problem, we need another donor. Maybe it's a problem. So given that history, we are going to do a National Cathedral. We will have had a conversation about contingencies, right? The third thing is committed funding. Where is the funding? I can't believe that you can go into a project like this and leave the funding hazy. Seriously, I think if any of you guys, the project managers, were in that room, you would have either got up and started screaming or gone under the table out of embarrassment, right? Because the funding is like this. And then some of the intangibles that they promise, this place will become a pilgrimage Mecca, we'll be competing with Jerusalem, all of these claims. I think some of them could have been subjected to a bit more, Oh, no, it's serious. You should listen to some of the speeches. But I think where we have, given the nature of this talk, where we have even more to offer, I think, is in the uncertainties. Because all these costs and benefits, doesn't matter what project you are doing, whether it's a national cancer referral hospital or a national cathedral, a lot of the contingencies require the exercise of professional judgment. And professional judgment is in this room. There are project managers who can tell you that looking at that thing you have put out there, that drawing, this 100 million won't work. So they start at $100 million and they are now at $400 million, right? Some of those conversations around exercising professional judgment, I think there were more project management people in the room. I have nothing against the great men in CASOPs. They are very important, right? But you can't build such a massive project and the governing board, there's not a single project management professional. Did you guys notice that? Maybe you didn't pay attention. There was not a single project management professional in that room. Yeah, I know that if they summon the angels and things change. I know that. All I'm saying is that sometimes they take time before they manifest. So given that fact, the gap between the time the angels manifest and the time the project has to be done, we need some project management people in the room as well. No, that's true. We need some project management person in the room. So my view is that exercising professional judgment was critical. And then the probabilities themselves, exercising whether this course will materialize, this benefit will materialize, require more research. And that is also the domain of people like the project, the policy analysts that you invited to give you this talk. On the cost side, I think, like I said, the certainties around those are much more straightforward, at least for two areas. We know the land that was given to the 14 acres of prime land. If you use any of the usual sources of trying to get data on cost of pricing in Central Accra, you get to maybe around $100 million for this. Roughly $7.something million an acre is, and that is actually being very optimistic because they are half plots going for $500,000 in cantonments. So $100 million is conservative. Then they decided to demolish everything else in the way, right? So passport office gone, number of diplomatic buildings gone, appeal court judge buildings gone. Just went with the bulldozer and cleared them out. Then some of these people said, no, we need new compensation. So compensation costs. Some of these I'm not putting in there because there are disputes about the exact amounts, but we have rough numbers which in the end are tally. Then you have to relocate some of the buildings, right? And a lot of people talk about the increased traffic. Can you imagine that spot? And what is the cost of that? And that will require you to do some estimation as well. Then the cathedral building itself was about $400 million. That one we know for sure because ECHA, which is the company, the ECHA, gave some information out inadvertently that some of us then got, and that tells you where the project of the building itself, that cost was going. Then we forget about the biblical gardens, like I keep saying, don't forget the gardens. And then the museum. People think the museum is just the building. No, it's the artifacts, the things in there that are so precious that people will come and watch. Those things don't cost; they're not cheap. Let me give an example. And if you get, let's say, the Dead Sea Scroll, you got a parchment of the Dead Sea Scroll, you can sell that for easily $2 million. Not the whole Dead Sea Scroll, one attachment. So you want historic objects from the Middle East, you're going to have to pay for it, my brother, my sister. I mean, yes, it's all God's work, but it costs money. The people that go and collect these things, they don't give for free because it's God's work. So by the time you are through with that, I'm sure at least $200 million will have been spent because similar costs in other Bible museums elsewhere. Even if we scale the ambition to another project I'll show you very soon, where it was a much smaller project, you're still talking about maybe $50 million for that project. Then you are talking about the maintenance outlay, because we always forget that. You need to project the maintenance forward, right? And all of these costs, if you are doing cost-benefit analysis, one thing you have to remember, present value, because the cost manifests over time. And you have to look at what would that cost mean today. Money today is always worth more than money 3 days after, right? So you need to do PV. But the funny thing that people don't often pay attention to is, what is the discount rate I'm using for that PV? So we have something called social discounting, where we say, okay, this is not a profit-making project. So if we're operating in dollar terms, and this was like a European social project, we'll be using something in the region about 3%, 4% as your discount rate for social discounting. Here in CD, given the alternative use of capital, the pressure on alternative use of capital, you have to maybe 25% discount rate, which for those of you who are a little financial in this room, that already start, your head is spinning, say, hey, this number. But at least on a present value basis, in CDs, it's not that bad. In dollars, on the other hand, you have to lower it. So if you do all of that math, you get to something like $1.2 billion conservative as the cost, as conservative, $1.2 billion. Remember that the national budget is about $8 billion, right? So that tells you a lot. Benefits. Here is why I think we didn't do any analysis at all as a country. I think we did a bit of conversation around the cost. It wasn't comprehensive enough, but the benefits are not at all. The key benefits was that this was going to be an event location. The second one was religious tourism. The third one was general tourism. And there's something about Christian feel good, which is very intangible, very hard to measure. Christians are going to wake up in the morning, eating less, and maybe drinking more water because Charlie, there's a National Cathedral in the country, So those ones, challenging, but we'll try our best. When you start to do benefit analysis, there's a tool that you have to become very comfortable with because of the nature of that exercise. And that is the tool of benchmarking. Because often the exact benefits is not possible to kind of point to. Like, this building, the National Mosque, what was it? What is exact? The Muslims in this country, are they eating less cocoa and drinking more, eating less cocoa and drinking more cocoa? It's not clear. So trying to then compute that and do a benchmarking, is challenging. But the only thing you can do is try and compare and say, okay. So we use all the benchmarking to try and make sense of the benefits that they are projecting, because they're saying that the cathedral will pay for itself many times more, right? So one of the first things you do is look at tourism numbers, right? And say, in the world, which sites get the most tourists and how much do they generate? You will not be surprised to learn that religious sites don't feature in the top 10. Human beings are very religious, but for some reason, when it comes to our pleasure, it always seems to supersede God. So all the top 10, are not religious. So that already started to tell you certain things, right? Then you go to, okay, let's look at religious, right? Stop talking plenty, just focus on the religious side. What is happening there? What is happening is that, yes, there are religious sites that are getting a lot of visitors and they are charging for entry. I went to the Duomo in Milan, and I'm sure if somebody saw me going to the Duomo in Milan, I would have taken a picture, put it on social media, and put a big banner, hypocrites. This is the guy who doesn't like National Cathedral. Look at him. He's going to Duomo. So these are the top ones. There is something that is very, very evident about this, which I'll come to in a moment. But pay attention to them. So St. Patrick Basilica, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, where Jesus Christ is assumed to have been, laid on the stone and buried in the tomb. So there's a church built around the tomb by the wife of Constantine, St. Helena, when he came to Jerusalem. And that site is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And it's one of the most visited. I have done it myself. And then you have, the Nativity in Bethlehem, which is actually now on the Palestinian side, not on the Israeli side. Westminster Abbey in London, the place where you have Poets' Corner, all the big important people in the UK are buried there, etc. So these are very important buildings. St. Peter's is, of course, the Vatican, right? We don't have to say more. The good thing is that in other places, they've done very detailed research about the impact of large church buildings. Believe it or not. Almost everything you are trying to do, somebody has spent more time figuring out than you have. And your first duty as a researcher is to acknowledge that. Which is why we do literature review, right? You acknowledge that other people may have spent more time thinking about it. So in Britain, they've done very detailed work trying to understand these cathedrals they have. They have like 42 important cathedrals in the country. And they wanted to understand what benefit does it bring to us as a country. And they went into it in great detail to look at that. So in coming to the position that I hold now, and in preparing myself to come and speak to you, I decided to analyze that to great detail. So you see how they look at the direct effects, indirect, and how those channels go through, and how then eventually you get some number. It's very interesting when I tell you the number for all 42 cathedrals, the benefits in a year. It's very interesting. The other thing is that they also do good classification, because a cathedral is not a cathedral, right? It depends on where it is, depends on what's its history, etc. So they do the classification in a way that I think is very important, because we will try and place our cathedral somewhere there. So the top level, on the top level, right, you have the large importance. The cathedrals, those there are of international prominence. These are cathedrals that people outside the United Kingdom have heard of. Canterbury, York, Durham. These are big, massive cathedrals. One funny thing about those cathedrals, though, is all of them are historic cathedrals. So large and of international prominence, the underlying factor still seems to be, it must still be historical. So Canterbury, for instance, 597, that was the year 597. That's almost 1,500 years ago. That was when it was built. St. Paul, 17th century, everybody remembers Sir Christopher Wren. So quite old. Then we have York, which was around 11th century. And you have Durham, which is also around 11th century. So you are talking of buildings that are 1,000 years and 1,000 years old. These are not just any buildings. That's very important. Then you have some other buildings and other categories that are medium-sized but historic cathedrals like Oxford and others. When you do the analysis, even the large historical ones of international prominence, they don't make more than £6 million a year. Yes, they don't make more than $8 million a year. So if you said, my analysis time frame is 10 years, and you maybe 20 years, and you discounted it, you still find out that the large cathedrals are bringing in less than $100 million a year into the UK over 20 years. So when you hear that $1.2 billion number, I want you to start to think hard. These are cathedrals that were built 1,500 years ago in countries that are the seat of Christianity, like all Anglicans in the world. The Canterbury is their seat, not just a segment of Anglicans. All Anglicans in the world. St. Peter's Basilica, right? The Catholics, 1 billion of them around the world. That's the ancestral home. So these numbers are very interesting. And when it comes to average, it's less than $2.5 million a year. 2.5 million pounds a year. So about $3 million a year, less than $3 million a year. That's the average historic major cathedral in the UK. That gives you an idea about what is possible in Ghana. And then when you look at the average in terms of attendance, you find out that, because you might say that, well, maybe we'll get more attendance than the rest. Well, the entire tourist figures for Ghana, the entire number of international tourist arrivals in Ghana is just about 1.1 million. All the tourists that come to Ghana. You can see that the large cathedrals, they get over 3.2 million, just the cathedral. And yet still the money, I was telling you, the money is less than $6 million, right? 6 million pounds. So for Ghana to even start to make the cathedral become important enough that it's competing with these other ones, we have to triple our national tourist arrivals just to accommodate that. Think of airports, hotels. So essentially, it's almost like if you get 6 million, all the things that would have happened would have made the 6 million irrelevant. Because you will have had to double your international airport size, build maybe 50 more hotels. What has that then got to even do a cathedral? So the numbers would not have mattered. Doesn't matter how many people came. The monetary values never added. Doesn't matter how they looked at it, because we have good benchmarking data to look at it. Then we look at the Bible Museum, the crown piece, the jewel in the crown. And then we look at other Bible museums, because that's another way you do it, is look at the experience of other Bible museums. The American Bible Society itself set up a museum for $60 million. And they had to close it down in 3 years. This is the American Bible Museum. America is one of the most Christian countries in the world. That's the home of America in a global evangelical movement. And they have over 300 something million people in that country. Over 200 million of them profess the Christian faith. They could not keep a Bible museum running. 3 years they shut down. You know the total revenue per year they were making on average? $54,000. And they were selling tickets for $10 each, which is probably not what we can sell it for. Because if you sell a ticket to enter the National Cathedral in Ghana for 150 cedis, and $54,000. And the American Bible Society had to shut down its museum. Also, trying to actually build a Bible museum is a nightmare. How you get those historical artifacts people can look at? One of the biggest Bible museums in the world is the Museum of the Bible in DC. And it's funded by billionaires who have made so much money and want to support their faith. This museum tried to get artifacts from the Middle East for people to come, attractions, Dead Sea Scrolls, cuneiforms, things like that. Thousands of them turned out to be fake, and eventually got people arrested, and they had to return them back. Millions of dollars were spent, and they got fake items because there's a lot of trade. There's a big trade in fake religious objects, artifacts. So, for instance, there was a rare piece that they bought for $1.6 million that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security said was stolen from Iraq and then sold to an antiquities dealer. And they were very angry with them. They had to come there, get them to send the thing back and pay fines. So this is very funny, but I find it the most interesting of it all. Then we wanted a consultant. We wanted a consultant to help us build this amazing Bible museum. We hired the same person who designed that museum that got into trouble with the fake artifacts. And then we gave him $6 million. A gentleman called Carrie Summers. This is the man. So he's the man charming our very Christian finance minister. You can see him working the charm very effectively. Up to date, nobody has accounted for how that money got spent, right? Because he was supposed to use this money to bring this Bible museum to life. But they should have just checked, of all the problems that the Bible museum that he worked for, it got before they hired him and gave him all these millions of dollars. And I mean, the money that they gave to him, all the dialysis patients in Ghana could be taken care of at no cost if we decided to use that money for that purpose. So this is why these benefits match up things are very important. Anyway, so I was looking at the Bible museum, the biggest Bible museum in the world, the one that I mentioned I've had a lot of problems. I was looking at their numbers, and I was surprised. Despite the very massive contributions, you see the contributions that we were making. 2019, the billionaires behind it gave 129 million. 2023, they gave almost $48 million. Despite all those contributions, the entity had made losses every year from 2020 to 2023. Every single year, except 2022. So even with tens of millions of dollars of contributions, the biggest Bible museum in the world makes losses. What convinces us that we can make profits from Bible museum? I mean, what's the data? What's the analysis? Nothing like that. And in fact, none of this was discussed ever. So when we now begin to look at the cost-benefit ratio, the benefits, the most generous I can come up with is $120 million in benefit over 10 years. Sorry, over 20 years. And of course, I showed you the most conservative cost, about $1.2 billion. So your cost-benefit ratio is 0.1, which in project management, in CBA terms, cost-benefit analysis terms, means like it's a terrible project. You don't even want to look at it twice. And remember that we did not only look at dollar numbers. We made an effort to quantify the benefits beyond the construction, right? That's the nature of the CBA tool, and when it's actually most powerful, it gives you this powerful number. And then you put the burden on the other person and say, prove to me that the numbers are not correct. How much tourists are you expecting? How much will they pay? How much is the additional infrastructure we need to support them? You do those numbers, and the whole debate stops being you said, I said, right? And I think, therefore, that the CBA tool that I just shared with you today is also very powerful as a dialogue tool. Because sometimes we just have these conversations and it's not clear where we are starting, where we are ending. So my argument is that just using this, what is your set of benefits or the set of costs? Somebody just publishing that, a supporter of the program, with some of these numbers, and then somebody else publishing another one. And then we now watch them debate on news file or something. And you kind of listen and say, no, that guy is making more sense. I think that would have been better as a way of getting to grips whether this was a great project or not. So I'm not only proposing cost-benefit analysis to you as a technical tool, I also think it's a great dialogue tool for politics and debate in this country. What we just did today was very helpful. It also will have opened up discussion around this $1.2 billion in costs. Could they have been used for similar things but with a different pedigree? Think of Konfanoche's hometown, Ukuagua, and this is the family home. This is one of the most prominent non-Christian religious leaders in our history. Why is the family home like that? Maybe $1 million could make a big difference. And then think about the Padmore Museum or the Du Bois Museum. Think of the Padmore Museum, the Du Bois Museum, things where we have true, authentic heritage and connections to Ghana as one of the world's leading sites of Pan-Africanism. This is something that is truly distinct. Christianity in Ghana is not very distinct. There are many, many Christian countries in the world. And I've mentioned Jerusalem, I've mentioned Rome, I've mentioned Canterbury. There are places where Christianity is much better associated with internationally. But there is no Konfanoche anywhere else except in Ghana. George Padmore did not go and make any other country his home except Ghana. Same with Du Bois. We didn't get Marcus Garvey, but we are getting there. So my point is that these are things that we are distinct worldwide. And then we could have spent far less. Today, Du Bois Museum, we are begging Americans to come and donate there. And there's a whole fight because they've given the project to some foundation. And, the current foreign minister is against it and things like that. Because we won't spend even $1 million maintaining these sites. And these are the sites that are truly historic and have real connection to our heritage. So the cost-benefit analysis tool that we just did now allows you to do the same for all of these projects, maybe 100 of them, and you will end up in saying, okay, $250 million for those. And these are the benefits. And the cost-benefit ratio will look far better than the National Cathedral. 200 of heritage projects truly connected to Ghana. And to my mind, it's surprising that we had a country of this size and scope, and the debate never took that turn. It's very surprising that we couldn't even basically get to a cost-benefit analysis comparison of different projects. So the job for you guys, project managers, is massive. It's a country waiting to be taken. This picture just tells you that even in Christianity, we have heritage sites in Christianity in Ghana. Remember the Basel missionaries in the Kuapem and the cocoa thing that they set up there? That is way more historic. That's 19th century. Stuff that connects us to the Basel missionaries around the world that nobody has spent $1 on. That's truly authentic. This is the Cathedral Basilica of Our Lady of Sorrows in Navrongo. It was built in 1906. One of the oldest, and connected to who? The White Fathers. This is an established strand of theology in African missionary context. And yet still, we didn't want to go there and make it much more prominent. Why do you want to build something new in Accra when we have Navrongo Cathedral, which has true history? The first missionaries from the Catholic Church that went all the way from Navrongo into Burkina Faso and the rest. And so when you see some of the northern, the upper east, upper west Christian communities that we have today in the midst of Islam, is because of this. That's history. That's real history that I can go there and say, okay, this is how come some Christianity is implanted in a region that is primarily Islamic. And National Cathedral is built right from the ground up, no history, no heritage, not connected to any aspects of the faith. Somehow gets $1.2 billion. And these massive buildings get nothing. So if you're a Catholic leader and you support the National Cathedral, I get a bit confused, a bit perplexed. There are a lot more authentic sides of Christian heritage in Ghana that could benefit.